AM 1230 and FM 92.7, your talk show. Tom Edwards and Rich Gruber in for Tim Bremmel today. Christian Schneider is a writer with the College Fix. He writes for USA Today. He writes for National Review Online. He used to write for JS Online in Milwaukee, and he may still. Christian, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Well, we appreciate you taking some time with us. Right off the bat, kudos on getting something published at National Review Online. How do you go about doing that?
Actually, during the Act 10 stuff, I used to write for them quite a bit. So I've got some people over there that seem to enjoy what I write, and I'll throw them something every now and then. I just send it to them and say, "Hey, you want to print this?" And they say, "Sure."
That's good. That's a good gig. So your line of work has changed tremendously. I mean, you used to be a regular reporter for the Milwaukee newspapers. And when did that start changing, and how has it affected you?
Well, obviously, you know that the newspapers are changing quite a bit. I'm not sure how big the newsroom is over there anymore. They still do a good job. But I was actually an opinion columnist. I wrote a couple columns a week for the Journal Sentinel and for USA Today. And then at some point in 2018, they came to me and said, "Yeah, we're scaling back and getting rid of the opinion page." So they don't have an opinion page anymore. They transferred it to something called the Ideas Lab, and so I had to go find something else.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a funny world that we live in now. I mean, we're seeing it at the Janesville Gazette on a regular basis, and it's unfortunate because newspapers, I grew up reading them, right, a hard copy, and actually sitting at the table and devouring a sports page. You don't get to do that anymore. The reason we have you here is the piece that you wrote for National Review Online is titled, "In the George Floyd Protest Era, Professors Find Themselves Under Attack." And it really is how professors are being affected by cancel culture. So if you would first tell us what cancel culture is, and then tell us a little about how the findings that you have in your piece.
Well, yeah, cancel culture, I think you're seeing a response to it here in the last couple of days with that letter at Harper's Magazine, where you have kind of all these intellectuals saying, "Hey, we want the right to free expression. We want to be able to say what we want and have, open debate, open dialogue without being accused of, harming people or violence against people, and, be able to make a living and be able to debate things without, Twitter mobs coming after us and calling for us to be fired." That's kind of where we are right now. And, we all know the old Rahm Emanuel maxim, "You never let a good crisis go to waste." And, the horrible, tragic George Floyd situation happened, and then you had all the protests, and you had all these groups that, want to make their mark. They want to show some sign of progress, and the easiest way to do that is to start getting people fired. And so what you've seen on college campuses is in the wake of the George Floyd protests, you've seen protesting groups go after certain professors that may not toe the progressive line on certain things, and they either end up getting fired or suspended, or they have administrators censure them in some respects. Like we had, there was a professor, a Cornell law professor, who wrote for a blog called Legal Insurrection, and he wrote something criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement and saying "hands up, don't shoot" was a hoax, I believe. And there's actually truth to that. The Obama's own Justice Department went in and did a report on Ferguson and what happened there, and found that "hands up, don't shoot" really didn't happen. Regardless of what you think of other, things that are going on, and police brutality and all those types of things. But he was censured by his administration there. You had one professor, or I guess a lecturer at UCLA. Some students came to him and said they needed longer times to do assignments and take tests and things because of the trauma of the George Floyd situation. And he said, no, you're still a student here and you still have to do the work. And he was let go from his job and then placed under police protection. So you have all these, all these things that are happening where, these groups are kind of using the protests and the unrest at this time to try to, gauge their process by getting people fired, really.
It's an interesting time because of all of the social unrest that we're going through, Rich, here. But it's not a new thing, this culture of canceling out or eliminating the opportunity for one to exercise free speech. And in an academic environment, more than perhaps any other, that's an environment noted for new ideas and fresh perspectives and sometimes old, tired perspective as well. How do you react to all of that? Are we at that stage where it's more important to impinge somebody's right to speak by virtue of wanting to avoid hurting somebody's feelings, or where does this take us? What's next in the agenda? Yeah,
I mean, of course, not a lot of us, but a lot of people remember the 1960s, where universities were supposed to be free speech zones. I mean, universities is where it all happened, where there were protests to allow people to speak and speak their minds, and now we've kind of flipped the entire opposite way, where universities are places where if you do speak your mind, you could end up getting yourself in trouble. Even if it's an opinion that's held by a great number of people in America, and that's not typically, not really all that offensive. One of the things that I do mention in the column is that you do have certain perspectives that some people would think to be controversial that obviously won't get punished at all. You have a professor at UW-Madison who, as protesters were tearing down the Hans Christian Heg statue, was cheering them on, saying, destroy them all. And yet, of course, nothing will happen to a professor that says something like that because the universities are so universally progressive. So, and you're right, this has been coming for years and years. I just think it's been intensified here in the last few weeks. Where you have such public focus, and for good reason, public focus on equality and African American rights and the police and all those types of things. But I do think some groups now are really trying to cash in on that and try to make themselves seem more effective than they are. And it takes a long time to pass a law. It takes a long time to make change, but getting people fired is a pretty quick way of doing it, and university professors seem to be going along with it.
Christian Schneider is our guest this morning. He has written a piece about cancel culture and how it is affecting professors at National Review Online. And we'll let people know how they can find that article in just a second. It seems to me that there's a school of thought out there, Christian, that, look, free speech has consequences. And if, I work for, a radio station, and I say something out of line when I'm on the air, well, there are rules and regulations. There are things that I can't see. George Carlin taught us about 7 words that we can't say. But it seems to me that has changed now, and it's more of a mob mentality where I can say, well, I disagree with you, and the mob comes back and says, okay, I don't really have a comeback for that, but I don't like what you're saying. I'm going to tell your boss about it. And then the goal is then to somehow have you removed as opposed to have dialogue. It seems dialogue has ended.
Yeah, I think that's right. People always pit this as, kind of a First Amendment free speech type of issue, but It isn't really. The First Amendment keeps the government from keeping people from being able to say what they want. In this case, it's not the government preventing people from speaking. It's these Twitter mobs who show up and start demanding people be fired. I can say something on the air right now that somebody might disagree with, and then someone else, of course, has the right to disagree with it and say what they want. But so it's free speech all around. But the line on what's being deemed acceptable to say in public and what's not is off now, and the people deeming what's acceptable are not the government or censors or any of that. It's just these groups of Twitter people who get together, and sometimes in some cases it's not really that many people. It's maybe a couple thousand people in America, but to employers and advertisers that seems like a lot of people, and so they can really mess with people's careers.
A couple of ways and issues that I've heard, and you touch on it. You kind of provoke me to think in this way. The way to defeat bad ideas is by exposing them, by arguing about them, by persuasion, and not trying to silence people in the process. Have we crossed the line now, where silence is the goal of those who bring forward a particular agenda? We want to silence our opposition and push our program through. How do you counteract that? From your perspective in the academic world, let's zero in there. How do you counteract that? Kill the culture of new ideas?
Yeah, I mean, it's just got to be up to university administrators to defend their professors, their lecturers, who say things in class that may offend certain students, but aren't. They have to make a judgment call whether something is offensive or not. And, I think you're right. There are some people that have deemed some issues so beyond the pale that they can't even be discussed in public. And, a lot of these professors, if they even mention something, they're putting their careers on the line. And of course, it all goes one way. It's not because they're taking positions that are so far left that they're out of the mainstream. It's typically always having something to do with racial issues or transgender issues, things like that. I do a lot of reporting on bias response teams, where I think I've been on your air talking about this before, where students can now report other students or report professors to the university if a professor says something that they disagree with, and then there's a whole process where they have to, they get investigated and all this kind of stuff. And it really is, kind of guilt by association, and it's smearing the names of professors. It's almost like a surveillance state, and that's kind of where we are right now.
It's almost like being a police officer nowadays. It's just not a good space to be in. You're going to get in trouble for showing up. I mean, it's crazy. We've got about 2.5 minutes left. Talk to me about Samantha Pfefferly. She is a student to-be student at Marquette. You tweeted about her, Christian. Tell me about her case real quick.
Yeah, she was a student excited about going to Marquette. She's a high school student, and she went on TikTok and posted a pro-Trump video that wasn't profane, it wasn't offensive or anything. And then she ended up getting a call from someone at the university saying, hey, wait a minute, we can revoke your acceptance to the university if you want, which is just crazy that, students who aren't even students yet at a university have to worry about what they say, even if it's inoffensive, on social media. I mean, the reason kids go to college is to grow up and become adults and learn how to get along with other people, and yet it seems universities now are going after students who aren't even in college yet because they expect students, to toe the line. And be fully formed adults when they show up on campus. That's not what college is for. And I say the school has since said that they're not going to revoke her acceptance and they're going to let her in. But she is now thinking, do I even want to go here? What's life for me going to be like on campus? If
she's had death threats. I mean, the
exactly.
follow-up to her video, her TikTok video, some of the vitriol that's and in the response from the university, which was crazy, they didn't even address anything that may happen to her or any of the threats. It was kind of, all woe is me that she was threatening the university somehow. And really the timeline there is kind of mixed up. She posted a video, she got a reaction from people, and then they started really coming after her with a vengeance. And she said, and they said, hey, we're going to report you to the school. We don't want you coming here. It was crazy.
Right. And what schools, who are all these administrators looking through, high school students' social media profiles to find things that they can kick them out of school for? I mean, it's just crazy.
Christian Schneider, tell us how they can find your article on cancel culture and professors, and how do they follow you on Twitter?
You can find the article on professors and cancel culture at nationalreview.com. It's under there. Search for my name somewhere. On Twitter, I am at Schneider_CM. That's SCHNEIDER_CM. And, and I write kind of all over the place. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be able to find pretty much everything I do.
Fantastic. Christian, thanks for your time. We do appreciate it. We got a break. AM 1230, FM 92.7, WCLO, Janesville, Beloit.